watch over our meeting and guide our hearts and minds to make decisions that are in the best interest of our water system and its members. Please watch over and protect our military men and women, our first responders, all those who work to keep us free and safe every day. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the June Holly Navarre Water System meeting of the Board of Directors. Thank y'all for being here. I want to announce that we do have a quorum. We're missing one, but we've got a quorum. Audio and video recorders are in use. If you would like to address the board, please fill out the member sign-in sheet. And if you would like to address a specific agenda item before it's voted on, please get acknowledged and approach the podium, and you'll be allowed to speak before the board takes a vote. And then there's general forum at the end for any questions or issues that aren't on the agenda. We're going to start off our meeting tonight with some employee recognition. Mr. Krigler, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Yes, thank you. We've got 3 employees that we want to recognize tonight. The first is a retirement. Trudy Tolbert has 23 years with the water system. She started in customer service, I believe, worked as a meter tech, and then currently works out at the wastewater plant under Mark Turner. Like I said, 23 years of service, and we're grateful to her. She's not with us here tonight, but we do want to recognize her. And then we also have 2 service anniversaries. We have Rebecca Dale and Donna LaPola, who is both celebrating 20 years of service. Interesting thing, I believe they started 6 days apart from each other 20 years ago. Rebecca works in our finance group. Don is currently our manager of regulatory compliance. Started out in customer service, also worked as a meter tech, became an operator. So she's held multiple positions in the organization. But both these employees are both critical to our operation, and we're lucky to have them. So we wanted to recognize them tonight. And we do have a plaque for Donna. Maybe we can do a little photo op and thank them.
So Donna, you started when you were 10 years old?
I did. Thank you for that.
Want to go down the flag? Sure.
Good.
Bill is my new best friend. Thank you. And as a gift, I get to go home.
I was going to say, you're getting over
Yeah.
No, that's my reward. I get to go home. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Donna.
See ya.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes and transcripts. We have the May 16th, 2023 regular meeting minutes and transcripts, and then we had a May 22nd board action without a meeting, the Club at Hidden Creek annual insurance renewal. I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes and transcripts as presented.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, there's one correction which I believe has since been corrected. There was a discrepancy between the minutes and the transcripts on the vote for the pool fill policy. It was 2-5 in the minutes and 2-4 in the transcripts because they didn't they didn't account for Director Matthews in the transcript. They since checked with him and he was a nay, so it's 2-5. So that's adjusted. I just want to have that corrected, so I was signing the correct minutes. That's all.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carries. Approval of memberships. We have 360 new memberships, 326 canceled memberships, and 1 transfer. And I get a motion to approve the membership report.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Next up, commercial impact review, Mr. Krigler and Mr. Snyder.
Yes, so thank you. So there's two components to this item. The first has to do with the RV parks that we are reviewing as part of this policy. The second has to do with a specific member's accounts, and I believe they're here in attendance tonight and plan to speak. So of the 23 accounts that we reviewed that owed money this year, there's 3 that are outstanding. 2 of those are RV parks. So kind of in the interest of fairness, we revisited the ERU calculation used for these RV parks. The ERU is the equivalent residential unit. It's how we determine flow for when we're reviewing projects and assessing our impact fees. So what we're asking the board to do tonight is to approve this revised method of determining the ERUs per RV space, and this will help lower the amount owed for 2 of those RV accounts. So what I'd like to do before we have any discussion, I would like Corey to expand a little bit upon what we're proposing here, because it is kind of a complicated issue.
Yeah, so back prior to 1990, I think it was around 1987 or 86, the board was discounting the worth of ERUs on RV parks, and that was to help lower the impact fees for those customers at the time, to help just start build revenue. At the time, they were only awarding 0.1 ERUs per RV space, so that's how you ended up with a cheaper impact fee. What we do today is 0.25. And I couldn't find any other time where it was ever less than 0.25. So what we're thinking the fair thing to do is the RV parks that paid for their spaces at that time are reevaluated for the 0.25, since at that time it was a board discount. And then that would eliminate the fees owed for one and greatly reduce the fees owed for another. And I've reached out to them about this possibility. And we're still in communication about what to do about the rest. But
Seems fair to me.
And how did you come out with the 0.25? Is that an industry standard, or is that
it's an
something you
industry
compared?
standard.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's in the FAC table.
And historically, is that about what the usage would equate to?
Yes, the new calculation is a lot more accurate.
What have the, I mean, historically speaking, how much doesn't RV space use water? In other words, I know we've charged
Around
them
0.25.
No, I'm not asking what we charge them for.
Oh, that really, I mean, that's about dead
that's
on
about
for the
what-
RV spots.
Okay.
Because it's from the septic design table, and I guess they've got a lot more accurate information on what that would use. It's not as off as other things.
I understand we've got a calculation
Yeah.
here, but what I'm saying is in reality.
Yes,
In
and
other
I've
words,
looked it up, and it's close to 0.25 ERUs. It's almost 0.27 or 0.24, but it's
Okay.
really close.
all right.
Can we say that's 75 gallons per day, give or take? Is that your,
Yes.
I'm looking at that right? Just for reference.
We're evaluating the ERU because they're expanding.
No, we're reevaluating because at the time it was a board discount, and we think it would be more fair to award the ERUs that have been in existence every other time I've seen, except for that one instance where the board agreed to discount.
Yep. Plus, it lets all
And
the RV parks be reviewed on this by the same standard.
Yeah.
Did it, we don't have the documentation what the board did back then, I guess, right? Or do we?
We do.
Okay. I have a problem if we told them it would be 0.1, and we knew it was 0.25. We only charged them 0.1 as a discount to get people in. It seems to me that 0.15 was more or less forgiven or written off by a board in the past, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But, so us coming back today and charging that additional 0.15.
We're not charging it, we're awarding it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're taking
Okay, I'm sorry, I was thinking we were.
we're giving the benefit of the doubt on the customer, so
Okay.
we're awarding it.
Okay.
I thought I was gonna open us up to,
Okay.
all the other ones.
No, as long as it's only the difference between 0.1 and 0.2.
No, yeah, now they're getting awarded more ERUs, which is essentially more impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought we were gonna make them pay the difference.
So we have a staff recommendation. We have two items actually in there. The first recommendation from staff is to approve a one-time RV Park ERU update to Emerald Beach Campground, Navarre Beach Campground, and Hideaway Retreat, respective accounts to reflect current ERU equivalency of 0.25 ERUs per RV space. I'd like to break that out from the second staff recommendation if we can, and
I make a motion to approve the number one staff recommendation.
okay, we have
I'll
a
second it.
motion and a second. Any discussion? Any board discussion? Any discussion from our members? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carries. Okay, the second staff recommendation is to approve an option for calculated additional impact fees outlined in draft letter for accounts of Johnny Houston's Gray Tap Room, Woodside Living, and Emerald Beach Campground. All of that was in everyone's backup. Jeff and Corey, do y'all want to address this issue?
Yeah, maybe let me introduce it, and then Corey can add to it, and then if you want to hear from the members, that'd probably be appropriate at that
Okay.
time. So,
Mhm.
as you stated, this includes 4 accounts. 2 of those owed money for this review, that being Johnny Houston's and Woodside Living. In talking with the members, we came up with basically an offer to transfer, a one-time transfer of some excess ERUs on their campground property where they had paid additional impact fees, allowing a one-time transfer to the 2 properties that owed money, and that would significantly reduce the amount owed. And we have the table, we have a background table attached to the memo that kind of summarizes all those quantities. So I believe the member reviewed that proposal and maybe still had some additional concerns with it. And that's kind of really where we are right now. We're trying to treat all these accounts fairly. So we weren't able to lower it past that. We thought the offer of the one-time transfer of ERUs was a good offer. But that's kind of where we're at with that. So I think now maybe we can hear from the member, then have a discussion about it.
But now that was contingent on the member actually
Yeah, so
requesting that from us.
yeah,
and
Corey, you want to
the board hasn't
elaborate how
done
you
it.
presented that and how that would
So
work?
essentially, it was just a one-time transfer where one account has an overage, and we came up with the solution that if it was a one-time transfer, we're not being unfair to other accounts. They essentially paid for it, and then we could work with them to reduce it with the ERUs they had on a different account. That would have gotten the impact fees down significantly. However, they just weren't happy with the result, so we couldn't really think of another way to meet them halfway or anything without being unfair to the other customers, so.
And is that an exception to our normal policy to transfer ERUs from
It is.
one account to another?
Yes, and it would have required board approval.
Right. All right, any board discussion on that? Or do we want to hear from the
So I
members?
just want to clarify, so right now, we don't have an agreement. Okay. We haven't come to an agreement.
No.
Okay, Mr. Walters, would you like to
I
address
do
the board?
have, can I ask
What
one
are we
question?
voting
On table 1, I'm looking at the net impact fees owed by before ERU transfer, the total figure. I'm having trouble coming up with that. Tell me how we came up with those totals? Because it looks like we add the 1486.8 and 511.6 and it's 1998.4. And then the 4.956 plus 1705 equals 6.661. Then you move to the next columns that are the dollar amounts, and they're off. They don't add up. So
It's not off, it's calculated by ERUs, and I can't do it without my computer in front of me right here, but
well, it says net impact fees owed on here. I can do it for you. before ERU transfer, 17,452.40 under the water.
I think it's getting misinterpreted, but it's not off. I can show you in my
Okay.
office, but
Okay, I was just adding the two numbers together. I don't mean to
it's,
say that
it's because I can explain it if I
Okay.
show it to you, but it's not a straight calculation.
Oh, okay.
You can't just credit all of it all at once because these are different accounts.
Okay,
This isn't treated as one account. So you can't just say it's the negative, and then the credits. These are all four different accounts, and we can't treat those as one account.
okay. I'll let you show me how you calculate it.
Okay.
Any other board discussion? All right, Mr. Walters?
Everybody ready to be here a couple hours? This is awfully confusing and complex, as I'm about to show you. So, let me tell you about this thing that I've been working on for 3 years, and I've been trying to get information from y'all, and I finally get some of it 2 weeks ago, which was claimed that it didn't exist, but then it exists, or it doesn't exist. So, I don't know, y'all figure it out. Okay, I'm in a unique position here, and I want to try to negotiate this down, and you see if my argument makes any sense, because trust me, my brain is jumbled on this. This is like y'all have flying an aircraft while you're building it. It's crazy. But anyway, I'm in a unique position because I have 4 businesses. 2 of them, you said, were in compliance. 2 are in non-compliance, which I make it easier by saying overpaid and underpaid. Okay, so let's get to the first one. Woodside Living, duplexes. We got 4 buildings. Those were built in 1986. We've probably been through 6 to 7 different owners. I happen to be the present owner for the last 5 years. Y'all have come to me and said, we don't have documentation, but we assume a certain amount was paid. And that I'm going to owe $13,000 because of y'all's assumption. Okay, can't provide me any documentation. You admit there's no record, so you're assuming. Well, I'm assuming the other way. I'm assuming that something was paid and y'all didn't document it correctly. So I think that's fair. Okay, your current calculation of the tap fees, you show us at 1.4 ERUs. If you used your calculations today, I should get 5 ERUs. And there is a house that's on that system, which y'all didn't even count, which is not even, the water's not on, but it's still on that same system. So that should be another ERU. So that would bring the total to 6. That should be a wash right there. Should be credited for those ERUs, and we'll call it a wash. All right, the Emerald Beach RV Park. I got a couple of first letters that showed I paid in excess of $120,000. Okay, now it's been whittled down to I only paid $35,000 or $33,000 in that excess. Anyway, I'm in excess. Now this is where it gets complicated because some of the paperwork doesn't exist because by your own admission, it doesn't exist. I've got it in writing right here. So, my proposal, without getting any deeper and making people's heads explode, is there were 50 water taps on that place that didn't get any credit. Y'all claim that I got a discount for a whole $2,500. It should have been $12,500. So I'm going to say, let's just work those ERUs out. You give me some ERUs for those 50 water taps over that $2,500. Give me some more of those. And then you can transfer those additional ones over to Johnny Houston, since that seems to be y'all's snag, which y'all have been after me since 2019 on that one. And I'll tell you, the history on Johnny Houston's is, I'm getting on my soapbox now. The history of Johnny Houston's is, Rob Williamson called me on the phone and told me y'all were going to discuss Johnny Houston's. I came down here, and sure as heck, y'all discussed Johnny Houston's, even though it wasn't on the agenda. He put a memo up there and said I owed $60,000. Before I could get a snapshot of that, Daryl said, we're not talking about that. It's not on the agenda. He pulled that memo off there, and I hadn't seen it since. My lawyers requested it, I requested it, and your lawyer says it don't exist. So, I'm telling you, Rob Williamson didn't calculate that memo. Somebody on the staff did, so I know it exists. So there's another suspicious thing that just bugs me. So, and if you're a reasonable person, that would bug you too. So, there's a memo out there exists. So now it was at 60,000, it dropped to 40, and now it's at 30. And you owe me 33, 35 at the park. Plus, if you give me those ERUs for that, I don't want any money. Just give me the ERUs. I'll transfer those ERUs over to JH, and you'll be happy with that, or should be happy with that, so there won't be any money exchanged with it. But, and I'm not even gonna mention the tap room. That was a battle fought and won, but we're even on that one. So, but that is it in a nutshell. I'm not, trust me, I got lots of paperwork here I could go over, but I'm just throwing you out there a quick synopsis of what I've been told, what I have, and see what y'all think about that. So I'm not looking for any money, but I'm looking for some ERUs that y'all can transfer. Call my duplexes a wash, because I don't think I got enough credit for that. You can't prove I didn't by your own admission. And like I said, you assume one way, I assume the other. So let's call that even. But that's where we're at right now. So. And my son's pretty well versed in this too. He's even got a spreadsheet for you if you need it. But that's what I would like to do right there, so we can get this thing out of the way and get this policy put to bed, and y'all can start concentrating on new owners and new taps and quit digging in the past. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I just make me go crazy. But I think any reasonable person would go crazy. I'm sure your staff has gone crazy looking at this stuff, because they're even confused. I mean, he had to have a computer to explain something to Daryl. I mean, it's that complicated. And my brain has gone blank numerous times trying to figure this stuff out. But that is it in a synopsis, and so that's what we're looking for. If y'all got any questions? I'll try and answer.
I do have a question on the calculation of the ERUs for Johnny Houston's. It shows you have a credit of 1.8 ERUs. Was that calculation made when the business was first opened, or?
Yes,
I have.
it was. They were already credited one from the previous business, and then the additional 0.8 was from the difference of the new business.
And when the extra seating was added outside, was that
It was
taken
only
into
for
account?
36 seats.
The outside seating?
The impact fees reflected on the account are for only 36 seats.
And how many seats do you have now?
They have more than 36.
Yeah. So I got 150 at least. But let me tell you about that. Y'all been using that excuse for anybody that counts seats in a restaurant. That's the worst possible policy you can do. That needs to be crumpled up and thrown in the trash can. Because you're calculating, you got to look at how often you're open, how often that seat's filled, what your hours of operation are. That seating thing is nothing but a grasp at straws. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. And y'all's policy brought this to a head right here. Your bad policy in the past, because y'all have to get your money before I can get a building permit. Anybody. So I got to run down there. Y'all do some quick calculations, and if anybody's ever built anything, have y'all ever changed your plans in the building process? Has anybody ever done that? Yeah, they all do that. Ask any builder. That's why they charge you to try and keep you from changing plans. As you go, ideas change, but because you required that money up front, then you stuck yourself. And so that's the problem. So, and you know, for 4 years, we were within that usage. So after 4 years, the community starts growing, we get better at what we're doing, and we grow. So, but at this time, everything's probably peaked out. There's more competition, same customer pool to pull from. So we're probably peaked right now. Probably pretty much every business is until more people move in. But so you know, keep bringing that policy up like that. But it's your bad policy that got us to this point right here. And so that's how I see it. And but that's my answer to that.
My point in asking that question about Johnny Houston's is when a business expands and it adds to that business, there should be some review of that business and additional ERUs paid at that time. And if that didn't happen, then, well, shame on us for not doing that then.
Thank you.
But this policy didn't just affect you, it affected, a lot of different businesses that have, are using more water than they have paid, using more sewer than they paid for.
But
And so,
there's a lot that use less.
that's true, but
There's
it's.
a lot that use less,
yeah.
so it balances out. If anything, it's in the favor. Because if you would have built the system to maximum capacity of what you charge, and it's not being used to that, you should have well enough. So is your processing plants running at 100%, or are they running at 50%? Because if you charge on your calculations, if you have calculated that you're gonna use maximum amount, I know residential doesn't even come close. So they're not maxing out. And by his saying there was only three businesses still outstanding, there's probably 25, 30, maybe 50 out of 500 something counts. That means those other ones have overpaid. So they're not using what you calculated. So that's another misnomer.
Well, the way this policy was designed a couple of years ago was that we would notify any businesses that were using in excess and give them an opportunity to adjust their water usage down to what they had actually paid for. And you should have gotten notifications to that effect, over a year ago that, hey, this is what you're using, this is what you paid for. And everyone that was affected got those same notifications under this policy that the board created. So the fact that you're using more money at Johnny Houston's, that's the biggest difference of the ones that I see.
Well, how much money have I taken from you? I pay for all my water and processing and sewer and everything.
But you haven't paid enough ERUs relative to what you're using.
But I'm overpaid at the RV park. That's what we're getting to the negotiation.
Well, that's a separate
No,
business.
they're all
and-
together, I own them all.
Well, I know, but it's still a separate business, and we
Well,
typically
you
don't
offered-
transfer
You
ERUs.
offered me a deal to transfer it.
You didn't come to us.
I came here to negotiate that.
Where are we at right now? The 23,000? They want
We're
23,000
the
in
bottom of table 3, bottom right.
Well, that's if it's requested, yeah.
Correct.
as you guys,
This
With
was
the-
like an example of how he could transfer them, and
That's what I
if he
was-
were to request that, we'd bring it to the board for approval. So it's, 7,
7?
From 50.
yes.
Yes. So you've seen that? sir?
I haven't seen it. No, my
Yes,
lawyer
he's-
talked about it, but I haven't
We've
seen
sent it to his attorney.
Have you seen it? Okay.
Okay, that's why I want to figure out where we're at. Do we need to have a sit down and,
Well,
We met with his
Where do
attorney
you-
a
Yeah,
couple weeks
Where do you
ago.
get
I think one of the comments I wanted to make is we kind of thought we were going to get some advanced information to kind of include in here, so but we didn't get that. So that,
yeah,
All
this is
the
new.
if there is
information-
anything
Gotta add
additional,
them.
we'll
I just
certainly
see-
look
All
at
the
it.
information I got came from y'all. I'm using y'all's numbers. So, but if you want to transfer ERUs, then you need to give me the full credit for what I've overpaid at the RV park, so we can transfer those.
I believe.
That's.
I researched the RV park, he was credited the full 50 lots at the very beginning, and then the additional, I think it was 30 or so lots. But I looked at all the notes from all the board meetings and all the payments on the account, and it adds up correctly.
Well, you didn't mention that in your email.
You were provided all the information that I'm aware of, so.
I got it right here.
Well, I think on 3 of the accounts that we're talking about, which is Johnny Houston's, Woodside Living, and Emerald Beach, y'all have admitted that there's no records of water payments whatsoever on all 3 of those
No,
accounts.
we never said that, actually. There are records, and they were sent to you. They were sent to Sid.
Here's Emerald Beach Campground, your email, no records for water impact fees paid, assumed 12.5 ERUs.
Based on sewer that was paid, right?
So
Yeah, and
based on
there are
assumptions,
records of that.
Here, Woodside Living, no records for water impact fee. Johnny Houston's, no records, but 1 ERU was paid. So I didn't send my email to myself. So what's going on?
So, Mr. Waters, just so I understand, and I've seen these guys come back and go back to, if there's no records, they compare to what had happened in the past. And part of it is
There are records on every account.
Got it. And we're paying for sins of the past, which is why they did the commercial.
Correct.
So
No, I'm
if I
paying
can
for
talk,
sins of the
no,
past.
do you mind if I talk to your number?
Go ahead.
So initially, the number is 50,000, right? So if you transfer and request a transfer of ERUs, I'm seeing 7,000. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
So does that seem to you, the water system being unreasonable to move this forward and
It
move
does,
on?
it does with the Woodside Living, the duplexes. Been through half a dozen owners, I didn't even use that water, somebody else did. But you're coming back to get it from me, and he made a statement that was wrong, in the last meeting, that, I could put anything I wanted on there and they wouldn't know it. Well, have you ever tried to get a building permit without water department
Doesn't happen.
memo? No, so that was an inaccurate statement.
If a building already exists, you can, but
Well, that doesn't make any sense though. If the meter already exists at the roadway, y'all are saying essentially that we can tap anything past the roadway. Is that correct?
past your meter,
Yeah.
it happens all the time. You're not supposed to, but it happens.
Well, we got 6 acres, so we can build anything we want and tap into that meter and not pay a tap.
Yes,
fee.
and then run the risk of one of
Stand by
us
for-
not
stand
driving
by
by
for
and
the
seeing
tamper
it.
fee
It would be
discussion.
against the policy of the
Yeah.
water system, but we have no way to know it if you
Well,
did.
that's what we were told,
Yeah.
that we could do it. I mean, y'all mentioned it in y'all's meeting, that we could do that.
So-
Or he
so-
did.
Without us knowing about
So
it.
just so
No, he
I'm
just
clear,
said, no, you
Mr.
could-
Water,
You could tap
I
in.
think what,
so I'm clear for
and
the
Will
board,
said that he
so
was
taking it
being,
from 50 to 7 is a non-starter.
Well, I want to discuss why I'm paying on those duplexes. When you haven't been given, you have no record of what was paid for impact fee.
there's a record of
Well,
what was
show it.
paid for
Show
sewer,
me
and
the
we
rec-
assumed whatever was paid for sewer was
Assumption.
paid for water. And
Assumption.
that's actually a credit, because there are no records for water, so we don't have to assume anything, but
Otherwise, we would usually get a water tap in at that property, something that we didn't even own back when it was built in '86. I mean, it just, someone.
You have to talk to people here at 86.
I
Yeah.
know. Well,
Yeah,
so
Someone
why are we
obviously
getting-
paid for their capacity at that time.
they paid for
Yeah.
sewer at a later date, that's why we have a record
Right.
of the sewer, but not the water.
Yeah.
So I can tell they're agitated at me, but I'm just as much agitated because you're trying to dig in my pocket for something, a bad policy y'all created, and now you're coming to me trying to correct it. That doesn't make any sense on any level. And the reason you're allowed to do that is because you're a monopoly.
What was the bad
I can't go get water and
policy?
sewer from anybody else.
I don't understand what you're saying. We created a bad policy. What was the
Well,
bad
obviously
policy?
it was bad because you're going back trying to correct it.
No, what we're doing is we're charging for what people are actually using, not trying to change a bad policy.
So if they would have figured it correctly in the first time, we
We,
wouldn't be here.
we figured your restaurant on, what, 25 seats or 30 seats, and now you've got 100 and some
Yeah,
odd seats?
and you know what? Y'all signed off on that too.
But when you
because
expand
I-
your business, you have to pay additional ERUs, and
I-
Johnny Houston's has
The
32,000.
state came
Any
in
RUs
and
up.
recounted my seats. I had to come down here and get a piece of paper signed by y'all that said it was okay, and you signed it. So, you know,
Well-
it's just all over the board, but, so what you're saying is that you can come back anytime you want, regardless of how far back it is, and create a new policy and get money from people.
That's not what we're saying.
That's what
What
you're
we're
doing.
saying is, in interest of fairness to businesses that are paying,
How is it fair that I'm paying for something that somebody else tapped into and y'all allowed it to happen? And I'm paying for it. How is that possible?
who else tapped in?
At the duplexes. In 1986, they were built. The water meter was 2003, which that took me forever to get. And so from 2003, whoever owned it to 15, I got it in 15. So for those years there, somebody was using y'all's water and you didn't seem to care. So why is it necessary now to go back and dig in my pocket? Shouldn't you go back to the previous owners and send them a letter and say, hey, we calculated that your people use this much water during that time frame. How about sending me some money? I mean, does that make sense?
Not at all.
No, it doesn't make sense. The whole thing is messed up.
No, I'm saying to try to go back to a previous owner and get money doesn't make any sense.
Oh, so, yeah, because you can't get to them. That's why.
We have to
But
go
you're
to the
still
current
using
owner
that
of the
amount of
property.
That doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing this?
But to make a level playing field for anyone who is paying for a certain amount of capacity
And how did the playing field get unlevel?
Through growth.
through growth.
Through growth and y'all's policies.
Growth.
When you expand your business, you know, you got to expect to pay additional ERUs.
Wow.
That's,
So I haven't expanded my business. Those are residential areas, the duplexes.
I'm talking about Johnny
Well,
Houston's.
I'm talking about the duplexes.
Okay, so if we wash that and you just pay the 32,000 for Johnny Houston's,
No,
You'll be okay with
you
that?
can pay me the 35,000 that you owe me at the RV park.
we're not giving any credits back
So
on
why,
anyone that
how
paid
come you
over.
can take money?
If you want to expand your RV park, you
How
can
come
do
you can
that.
take money but you
I
can't
can
give
only
it back?
take one of you, please.
Yeah,
Take turns,
one-
please.
So, well, obviously you and I can't communicate. So does, if everybody else wants to talk about it, I'm fine listening. I think I'm being reasonable that I've overpaid the RV park. You give me those additional ERUs, I'll transfer them to Johnny Houston's. And you give me those for the Woodside Living, which wasn't calculated properly because you have no proof, and then we'll call it even.
Mr. President, I'm not sure that I'm gonna be ready to make a vote on this tonight. I don't know what the rest of the board members are, but I would like to see the original documentation showing where the ERUs for water were purchased for each of Mr. Walters' locations before we vote on it. Because if we have it, like our engineering department says we have, then we'll be able to see it. And if we don't have it, like Mr. Walters says, then we'll be able to see that we don't have it. But since I don't have that answer in front of me tonight,
We don't have any background right now on the situation. That's what Jeff was alluding to, that
Correct me if I'm wrong, what we're basing it on is money paid.
Yeah.
You-
Well,
Right, so we have, those are the.
that's
records.
one account, that's the least amount of records we have. All the other accounts have receipts of the money paid and the ERUs that match up in the billing, so I can easily
We can
provide
certainly
that.
summarize that and bring it
Yeah.
back, that's not a problem.
Whatever information's going back and forth between us and our member, you want us to make a decision. I mean, if we're gonna make any kind of decision, we need to see the data. Otherwise, it's just gonna be either our policy or not policy, and that's not what we wanna do.
All right, so when was the deadline on this?
Well, we've kind
I
of
didn't
been
pick this one.
working with them on it, I don't think we gave them a hard one, did we? We were working
I
to see.
don't know about this one.
No, I've had legal counsel because y'all wouldn't talk to me. Your other CEO, Dallas, who y'all fired, he refused to talk to me, so he lawyered up, so I couldn't talk to anybody, so I had to go through my lawyer. So that's why this got sticky, which it shouldn't have. But, I mean, is that something y'all would even entertain, is looking at those numbers? I mean, obviously I've grossly overpaid at my RV park. I mean,
I can easily get you those numbers.
okay.
I personally have some concerns about transferring ERUs because that's not in line with our normal policy, and I don't want to set a precedent on that. So I personally have some problems with even transferring ERUs from one business to another. They're two different kinds of businesses.
We've only done it once in the past, like this. And we still talk about it today.
We're still paying for that decision.
So we're,
On a regular basis, so.
so are we looking at a motion to table this item until we get more information?
I don't think we need a motion, I think.
Mr. President, you can make whatever decision you want here. Staff was simply responding to the information that was coming through my negotiation with Mr. Walters' attorney, who I communicated with this morning, and we were under the impression that he was going to be here to make a presentation, and he let us know that Mr. Walters would be coming to make this presentation. So we were here to simply provide you with staff's report. This is what staff's report is. Their recommendation on how to minimize the amount that's owed on these four accounts was a recommendation on transferring ERUs. That is something that staff wasn't doing on its own and absolutely couldn't do. That would be a board policy. But if you're not interested in transferring ERUs in that scenario, we can take that off the table and treat each of them individually. It's whatever your pleasure is. The deadline for these to be resolved has passed. As the CEO said, this is one of the last remaining accounts to be reviewed and resolved. So staff can get you those numbers quickly. You can table it for a month and we can present an option, negotiate with the member in between, or give us whatever direction you need. There's no motion before you.
It seems like we're pretty close, I hope.
Yeah, we're close.
Okay.
We're close, but I just want to voice my opinion to y'all to understand that this just doesn't seem right. I got a good sense of right and wrong. I was in law enforcement for 21 years. I know what's right and wrong. This just don't seem right.
What do you mean we're close? I'm not hearing much.
Well, I hope we're close, otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, you got an offer on the
7,000.
table.
So.
You have, I'm sorry,
No,
you
no,
got an
no.
offer on the table here to reduce it to 7,000 and transfer some ERUs from my RV park over to Johnny.
But you're not
Houston's.
willing to accept that offer?
No, I am, but I wanted to see about not only the additional at the RV park, but the duplexes. That's what I'm here to see, if there's any give there. So,
But when we have a thing start up, or a new business start up or whatever it is start up, and they come to us, we do a best guess on ERUs to the best of our ability, right? We think how much you're gonna use.
If they don't provide data, yes.
If they don't provide that, and frequently, it ends up through expansion or whatever, people use more than that. So then we have to go back and request additional, request the money for additional ERUs. Because everybody, it's to your advantage to underestimate what you're gonna use, but to my way of thinking, it seems like in 2022, your usage was the equivalent of basically 1.7 ERUs more than you paid for there in the Woodside. So, I mean, it's based upon the actual usage now. And
I understand
we
that.
can't go back to the previous ones previous owner, because that's what you're using now. I mean, I just don't understand why you would
Well, I just don't
have
think
heartburn about that.
I just don't think you gave me enough credit for ERUs, because you don't have any records of that. He keeps saying, oh, yeah, we base it on, but it's an assumption. You're basing that on
Well,
assumption.
we're based it on the ERUs he paid for sewer, is that correct?
For one of the accounts.
Mr.
yes.
President, we've asked, a couple times it's been said that we're gonna get the numbers, but I asked for the original document. So I just want to clarify that for everybody. The board, or this board member, wants to see the original documents from when the ERUs were purchased for each property.
Okay. And let me just ask you this. The $7,024.05 that on table number 3 that staff has put together, you're acceptable with that number?
I'll accept it tonight. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, but I don't think that somehow we got a water tap fee at Woodside Living. I mean, that number, I don't know, because somehow we got a water tap fee
You're getting credited.
at Woodside.
You're getting credited for it. You're getting credited the equal amount of what sewer is paid, so that's the water tap fee.
Yeah, but there's 6 buildings there, essentially, and we have no ERUs reserved for water whatsoever.
You do,
If we were
you're
to
getting
take
your reserve for water.
for
We credited whatever was most recently paid for sewer. It could be assumed that they're all being connected to sewer. Therefore, we're crediting you whatever was paid for sewer, everything for water. So you are getting a water credit.
which is how many ERUs?
The 1.429,
And how many is on sewer?
1.429.
So double, so
No, they're always equal. So you get certain ERUs for sewer, certain ERUs for water.
But see, I think this is where the confusion is, because I'm almost positive that those duplexes were on septic at some time.
Yes, when it first set up.
So,
And then it paid sewer at a later date of $5,000. So whatever the ERU was worth for sewer at that time, we gave you credit for water as well. Because we assumed that y'all had to have paid a water impact fee.
see, I think this is where a lot of this confusion comes in, because at the RV park, I'm pretty sure we paid 12.5 water ERUs prior to doing the entire thing on septic and water.
Yes,
So,
and it was 50 sites, and you got credit for those. And I even went back
You said
and
you only
redid
got
the
20
math.
Only got 2,500 on your email, you said.
I don't know, I don't have it in front of me.
essentially, we should have roughly 30 ERUs paid for at the RV park for water and 20 ERUs for sewer. If you go back and look at all the records that we paid for, receipts, and what, there was a letter from the water department prior to us purchasing RV park, which stated that there were 50 sites on water before we even took over. So
And I
we
give
didn't
credit
get-
for that.
We didn't get any credit for that
He
whatsoever.
definitely did.
Here it says deducted water ERUs by giving $2,500 credit to sewer.
Yes, because they deducted your, I think that was the third iteration of impact fees being paid. The company gave y'all a discount on your sewer impact fees because you were getting rid of water sites.
All right, why don't y'all do this? You get it all out, get all your paperwork together that you say you have, and let's put it out to where we can all understand it. Is that reasonable? But yes, we can work that deal out, but if they still want to see this deal, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see all this through first before we pay any money, one way or the other.
I agree.
I think that's reasonable that he says he's got all the paperwork. Let's put it together in a nice little chart, flow chart, so we can all understand it.
All right, so Jeff, real quick, if at the end of the day, Mr. Walters is convinced that that's right,
It's been
and the 7 is good, do we need to make a motion now for that, or is that something that you guys can go with?
So is that 7
No.
include transferring of any?
No, I think we need to look at the information.
Same here, yes and no.
That'd be premature.
And board members, I just want to let you know that all of that information was provided by staff to Mr. Bigham. Sid Bigham is the attorney. He requested a very detailed list of all these documents. That was provided 2 weeks ago. So we will get you copies of all that we provided to the attorney for the member who's standing before you.
Mr. President, I've got another question on let's go back to the 1.7 ERUs that they had for sewer that we're using to determine what their water ERUs would have been, correct? But if at the time that they got the sewer, we didn't know how many ERUs for water, or even if they did have ERUs for water at that point, however many that may have been, we would have only charged, it seems to me we would have only charged them for what they were actually using. In other words, the 1.7, in order to calculate that, if you didn't know the base.
I doubt it.
That's not necessarily how it was done, Daryl. It was a reiteration in most cases. I'm not saying there weren't exceptions, but in most cases, it was a reiteration of how we do the water and wastewater to begin with. We use the septic chart that's in the state, which of course would hammer the property owner, and the whole gist of why this process exists is that Holly Navarre allows the member to provide evidence of what their actual use is. So, in the case of this wastewater fee, whoever owned that facility at that time, they agreed that they wanted sewer because they never had to put sewer in there by force. So they came in and said, hey, we'd like to sewer this project, maybe either to expand it or to get rid of the septics that were failing, whatever. But they would have again been allowed to say what they wanted to reserve. Now, if I were the owner of the RV park at the time, I would have gone back to get the most discount that I could possibly get. I would have said, no, we're not using the state septic chart. I want to see my records of water use at this facility, because now you have your own records of your own facility. So they would have said, hey, give me the records for the last 5 years or however long they've been operating, because that's what the engineer would have done on Holly Navarre's side. And they would have taken the peak of that, and that's what they would have paid for in sewer, not the septic.
And you gotta keep in mind too, is this policy was put in place at the worst time in the history of the United States. We went into a pandemic where everybody was locked down, businesses were closed. And we as business owners, when they let people out, the last 2 years, 21 and 22, was a boom, okay? Now we're normalizing. We're seeing the numbers go down. Life is returning to normal. And a lot of y'all's figures are based on that boom because there's a lot of people out out at that time because they'd been pinned up for a long time. So just throwing that out there. I'm not saying changing anything, but I've just seen it from my perspective, watching my numbers. So
I don't see us reaching a decision tonight, not without additional information. So we're gonna table this until our next meeting. We're gonna get more information, and then hate to have to ask you to come back, but without
no,
us having this,
I
we
would
don't have
love to
enough to
see
make a
that.
decision.
This is a complicated issue. I mean, it hurts my head.
Didn't,
And
Bill, didn't you
I
say
would like
that,
to see it laid out where I could understand it easier.
we understand what Will said, it's his lawyer's been presented all that not true?
That's correct. All of the information that was requested was compiled and sent to the lawyer. It is, the board would be helpful for staff, however, if you are not in a position or you do not want to contemplate transferring ERUs between businesses, then you ought to let us know, because that will severely hamper the proposal that has been put forward. So if that's not going to be the case, and you ought to give us some instructions about that, or at least think about it, because we're going to leave here thinking that that's still an available option that we would present back to you. If that's not so, then let us know.
I'm not in favor of transferring ERUs myself. I think that's against our normal policy, and I'm not in favor of it. But you know, if it would help us get to some kind of middle ground on this, considering the circumstances, I would go along with it. That's my take.
Again, I would point out that we're past the middle ground, because we're going from 50,000 to 7,000.
Yeah.
But they're only able to do that because of transfers between ERUs, between businesses which don't have anything to do with each other except they have a common owner. So if that is not the case, then we need to know, because that's a whole different issue.
I've got a hybrid version of that. I'm not for transferring tap fees or ERUs. It's just a disaster. But I've got another disaster that I would be willing to agree with. I have no problem with us buying his capacity from Emerald Beach RV Park and him paying for his capacity at Johnny Houston. But like I said, that opens up another can of worms, so I was just throwing that out there. I think that, and the reason I say that is if the member comes in and tells us what their capacity is, then they're stuck with it. Then that's it. If they've overestimated, then they've paid us too much. If they've underestimated, then they owe us additional funds. Likewise, if we do the calculation and we're way over, I personally think that we should refund the member after maybe a 2 or 3 year period that we've decided that we did the calculation and we did it wrong based on their particular.
Based on their actual use.
Yeah, based on their actual use. But that's
By the same token, if their actual use is significantly higher than what we calculated, they have to pay the difference.
Yeah. I'd be willing to go there. But I think that's a much longer discussion.
I would suggest that once y'all get your data in front of you, that just see what you come up with. I mean, I'm open to y'all's suggestions. See, I just came here because I felt like I was getting a raw deal at the RV park and at Woodside. So that's why I came here to throw this out here and just to let y'all be knowledgeable on it, because I'm sure you don't know anything about that stuff. But anyway, that's it.
Thank you, sir. Jeff, real quick, does this put the commercial annual review, is this the last outlier? Everything's been taken care of as far as maybe not is in your lap, right? There's no other,
No, there's one campground that we're still
Yeah.
working with.
Waiting to hear back from them.
and how many overall did we hear, and how many did we have to get adjustments for? Can you give
Corey's
us that
got
real
the
quick?
stats on
Off the
that.
top of
Just
your head?
adjustments, just a few, if you're wondering
Out of
about,
500 commercial accounts or something?
oh,
like
how
that?
many had to pay? 22 accounts out of 533.
Thank you.
And 21, or 20 have paid.
Okay, thanks.
Not for the most part.
All right, I'm done.
All right.
Sir, I need your name. Walter?
Houston, it's on the thing. It's on here.
Houston Walters, Husten?
Owen.
Owen, okay. All right, we're gonna move on to, insurance renewal, insurance
I don't
renewals.
believe you finished your tabling motion there. Did you?
Don't need a motion.
I don't think you voted on your tabling motion.
There wasn't a motion to table. I asked for a motion, but we don't have to have a motion to table it.
Okay, I thought it was a motion and second.
I asked for a motion to table and, was told we didn't need a motion
All right,
to table it.
sorry.
That's okay. Next up, insurance renewals. We have Jim Grace from Underwood Anderson here with us tonight. And Mr. Strickler, do you need to say anything first? Or do we?
Yeah, I did. Before we hear from Jim, I kind of wanted to kind of update how we're handling insurance internally. Of late, insurance has been kind of an orphan, some of the vacancies and turnover we've had. So we really come up with a formal plan that we think is going to address that. We're going to have basically an insurance committee. Barbara will be tracking all policies, tracking the renewals, tracking when they expire. So we'll have one person tracking that. So for instance, for Holly Navarre, it'll be her, myself, Jared, who has to be involved for workers' comp and for the auto policies. For the club at Hidden Creek, it'll be that same group plus Kim. For Messy, it'll be that same group plus Phil. We've already created a tracking sheet that shows it. Every policy for each of the entities with the expiration date, the premium. So this is something that's just taken a little bit of time to get our arms around, but I think we've got a good plan now. We've got the right person handling it. So, we had Underwood Anderson come back on board on May 16th. Since then, they've been working really hard to get us quotes on not only some of the policies at the club, but our Holly Navarre policies. That's what Jim's going to present tonight. But yeah, I know we've had some recent confusion, which is related to some scrambling at the last minute to get some policy. So nobody likes it. I don't like it. You guys don't like it. So we think we've got a plan in place. And then, so tonight we want to hear about we got to renew the Holly Navarre insurance policies before July 1, and then we've got to renew the wind policy at the club at Hidden Creek. So I think with that, we can let Jim expound on that and go from there.
Welcome, Jim. The floor is yours.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. He needed 2 hours, so I hope you got another 2 hours. But I'm going to, first off tonight, I'm going to be discussing the insurance renewal for Holly Navarre Water System that is effective July 1st. I'm going to preface this first to talk about the environment of the property and casualty market, particularly in the state of Florida. And the property and casualty market in the state of Florida has never been in such a state of disarray. And the availability, not so much for liability and other coverage, but your property coverages, it is a true challenge right now. The availability for wind coverages in the state of Florida right now are at an all-time low. What we understand is that there's about 50% of the available wind capacity that was here a year ago for the entire state of Florida is here now. So insurance carriers are really picking and choosing the insurance the customers that they want to offer coverage to. It is not uncommon for us to have large insurance customers that may have large property schedule such as yourself. Just for reference, your property schedule this year is after much scrubbing and discussion with Jeff, contemplates $19,780,000 worth of assets to insure. And this includes building and contents, and it's a combination of the two. Last year, we insured about $15.9 million worth of, or that was the amount on your policy, was about $15.9 million. And after some discussions with them, there's been enhancements to your property schedule, and included in your proposal is a statement of values that contemplates what's included in all those. But what I'd like to do is let you know that we went out to market, and our fuse was relatively short by the time we were able to negotiate on your behalf. And the carriers that we went to were all carriers that were specialized in municipalities. And the two other carriers that we went to, number one was called Wright Specialty. They write municipalities, and I brought a copy in their emails. Thanks for your submission, but wind and hail is not an option for us in the state of Florida. They would not offer us a quote. They would offer us a quote on the other coverages, but they weren't of the comprehensive nature of what we had. And then I also went to a company that their main paper was through a company called AIG. You've probably heard of them. And they are not able to offer wind coverage in the state of Florida. So that left me going back to our existing carrier, who is Philadelphia Insurance Company. And they are an A-rated admitted carrier in the state of Florida. And they have offered us a renewal quote based on our $19 million worth of property coverages. And I want to give you guys the rate that they are charging us is almost, I couldn't, on a composite rate, they are charging us 44 cents per $100 of value. And that is based on all the assets that you guys have. That is very, very low. Last year, the rate was about 36 cents per $100 of value on the entire assets. Now, the rates for this building are higher than that, but the rates on all your lift stations are much lower. The composite rate for all overall, and I'm just using this as an index for you guys to kind of get an idea on those rates. I think you all have a copy of the proposal that was presented, but I'm going to go through this. We've got property coverages that are contemplated based on a statement of values, and all of you have a copy of that statement of values in your presentation, and you've had an opportunity to review that, hopefully, and it's got a total down at the bottom. And so Jeff, Barbara, the committee was just so effective. This is the way I see, we have had about a 3 or 4 year scrub of your insurance portfolio, and it is refreshing to say we are getting back on track, and we're getting a good handle on this insurance portfolio. So you've got your property schedule. The next attachment you have is an attachment that contains all of the equipment. This is mobile equipment, pumps, trailers, lawnmowers, excavators, trenchers, etc. You've got a schedule of all of those. Those have been reviewed and scrubbed by your committee. And then after that, I want to go into the next thing that I want to touch base with is your general liability insurance. This is an interesting aspect of this current program that you have. You have insurance limits for $1 million per occurrence with a $3 million aggregate. Those are limits that are unique to this program. This program also provides third-party pollution coverage, It provides, and there's no exclusions for anything dealing with water and sewage it's a program that is endorsed by the National Association of Water Systems. It's the only program in the United States endorsed by that program. This program, the next aspect under your general liability is your directors and officers coverage. It also carries a limit of $1 million per occurrence with a $3 million aggregate, and it is sistered with your employment practices liability that carries a $1 million per occurrence with a $3 million aggregate. I'm gonna, the next coverage is your business automobile coverage. Your business automobile coverage has a $1 million limit, and behind the business automobile limits is your schedule of all your vehicles, which have also been scrubbed by this committee. And we have also done a review of all the drivers for the water system. We do that each year, and making sure that there are no skeletons in the closet as far as drivers that you have, because that's important to make sure we've got an acceptable list of drivers. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay? I'm going to move along. The next coverage we have is your commercial crime policy. This covers employee dishonesty, forgery, alteration, theft of money and securities, and it has a limit. It has a limit of for computer fraud. Now, this computer fraud limit is not a substitute for a good cyber liability policy, which we also have in place. That is an enhancement to this policy. Okay. Here's the next page on there is your commercial excess liability policy. Also known, this particular policy is an umbrella policy. In the event that any of the policies that have limits, your general liability, your auto, your workman's comp, your directors and officers, or your employment practices liability, any one of those policies that have a claim and the limits of $1 million per occurrence are maxed out, you have a $5 million umbrella that will stack on top of all of those. There is not a policy that I write in my entire agency that will umbrella over all of those policies. You would have to, I would have to be buying $5 million limits on liability, $5 million on auto. I would have to be going to each individual policy and attempting to find a company that would write those kind of high limits. So this is an extremely comprehensive policy that is very broad-based. The next coverage that we've got is your workman's compensation policy. We contemplate in that some credits. We've got a drug-free and a safety discount. Zenith Insurance Company is our workman's comp carrier. It is different from Philadelphia Insurance Company. Zenith has been the work comp carrier here for, I know, 20 years. We've got a great loss control rep that frequents with the staff here, and visits and makes recommendations. She communicates with me on improvements or attaboys for the water system. So I'm really happy that Zenith is still on board with that. So though in a nutshell, that is a brief summation of the portfolio that we've got for Holly Navarre Water System. We had a relatively short fuse. We've got some things that we want to improve on. I think there's things that we're still scrubbing, and but I think we're in a really good place. Any questions for the water system on the insurance portfolio?
You mentioned this doesn't cover cyber?
We have a separate cyber liability policy, Mr. Campbell. Yes.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, did we check with Six Watch and see what they insure as far as cyber, since we're using them? Do they have anything at all?
That I don't know. I know
that's kind
our
of
policy with Evolve is good through December.
Right.
It would not be out of line for your cyber provider to maybe name you guys as additional insured on their certificate of insurance. That would just be a level of additional coverage that might be a layer in the event that there was a claim, in the event that they made a mistake.
Jim, there's not a separate cyber policy, it's included in the master policy that you
No,
got
there's
here?
not. There used to be. Philadelphia Insurance Company used to include cyber. But when social engineering and when they started getting hammered with when they got really good at hacking into computers, Philadelphia said, we don't want any more of this. And so they got out of the cyber business. So we went to Evolve, and they've got a good product. It does not renew right now, I believe, maybe
December.
December, yeah.
And the back page of the quote has I believe, the differential between last year and this year, my understanding.
So the difference in the commercial package, you got the asterisk, property values increase. You saying that increase is all due to higher property value over the last year?
Two factors, okay? We had two factors that attribute to your increase. Number one, Philadelphia Insurance Company, due to the last 2 or 3 years of supply chain demands, they have said, we have got to increase our property value, our inflationary increase more than we normally do. They used to use about 6 to 8% each year for an inflationary increase. This year, they did an 18% increase in valuation. I don't look for that to stay every year, but this year, it's like they're doing a catch-up. We also had a composite rate increase. They just had a rate increase, went from, on your property, from 36 cents to 44 cents. So it was a two-pronged approach on what caused our rates to go up.
That was like 30%.
Overall, I think it's about 17% increase.
And Mr. Grace, based upon the coverages here, I see everything covered, but I don't see any wind or hail, so that is not included in this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And forgive me for not beating up on the wind and hail. We have, your wind coverage, you have a $5,000 deductible for all perils with the exception of wind and hail, which is a 5% of the value of that building, of that structure. Okay? So you've got a 5% wind deductible. So that is as good as you can find in
Yeah,
industry
I understand
standard.
that. I understand that standard. I also understand that everybody, I know in my home insurance, the wind and hail is the largest portion. Bill, what is the wind and hail as a percentage of its total bill?
I can't answer that.
You don't know?
No, sir.
Because it's so huge, and with the deductible and then the amount of premium that you pay for that, I think the board needs, for wind and hail portion of it, my position is, I've been considering this on my own personal thing, is I think at some level, when you add the aggregate, what you pay in a premium for that particular part of the coverage and what you pay in the deductible, you're paying a deductible per occurrence, you get into an area where you might want to consider for being self-insured and having some contingency funds set aside and not paying that what I consider a really large premium, because I know it's really, and it's not your fault, they're going nuts. And I think a lot of big commercial businesses and entities, and I talked to Jeff, I think even some municipal ones are going to be self-insured for the wind and hail portion of it in order to save that money. And I'm not saying spend that money, put it in your thing, you have to set aside a contingency emergency fund for those kind of things, a capital emergency fund or capital contingency fund or whatever you want to call it. for each entity to cover those. But, and I'm not saying we have to do it this year, but I think it's something we need to consider in the future because it's only going to get worse.
Well, I do have, I've got some information that's some information of your total premium here, of that, your property premium, I'm gonna, round numbers is about $90,000. Not just the wind, total property, including fire, lightning, the whole thing. For the size schedule that you have, I'm really happy with that property premium.
Did we have any claims that we know of this past year on any of our, in this area, on any of our?
I'm not aware of any since I've been here. Before that, I don't know. I don't
Recall any either. I just don't know.
I think your loss history has been very good this past year. Yeah, there's been maybe an auto.
I think it's been good for several years since I'm on the
more
board. I'm not
casualty
aware of anything we collected on for Holly Navarre water system.
Right.
On any of the.
Yeah, I wasn't here for Sally. I don't think there was anything from that.
Wind and hail coverage. So that's just my input. I just think we need to really consider the cost benefit analysis of adding or keeping that covered.
So we've got two main policies that we're looking for a vote on tonight. One is the overall insurance for Holly Navarre water system, which renews when?
July 1.
July 1.
Yes.
And then we have the wind coverage for the club at Hidden Creek, which we need ASAP. So
if you would, I've got some information on the club at Hidden Creek because there's more. We've got the club at Hidden Creek's wind policy proposal that you have a copy of, but we also have the travelers it's called their RAP policy that also renews effective 7/1, and that is part of your proposal also that you have. And if the premiums are down on that also, the travelers RAP, we did not have access to a lot of premium information because we were not the agent on this last year, but I was able to glean enough information to find that the traveler's policy is down about $100 from last year. That is a policy for the club at Hidden Creek that includes your directors and officers liability. It includes your crime policy and your employment practices liability policy. And then you had your cyber liability policy for the club at Hidden Creek that's down about $100 also from last year.
That's the next agenda item?
Yeah.
So really the bottom line for this one is 245,200.
Right.
Except for cyber, right? But this goes in 1 July, and I'm going to assume there's a budget line item for this, and we're within that.
Probably within 15%, 16%. With the increases.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the policy for Holly Navarre water system.
I'll second that.
Any board discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carried. All right. We are approved on the Holly Navarre water system insurance, and then next up is Club at Hidden Creek insurance renewal.
Yeah, as Jim mentioned, he's been working on this since basically mid-May. And we got that quote in last week. And,
for the wind coverage.
For the wind.
Whoa, boy.
And we've been pushing it and feel like we need to act on that tonight for sure.
The club at Hidden Creek's wind policy, the package policy renewed late May without wind coverage.
Right.
I was tasked, Jim, we need to find some wind coverage. We had a unique carrier that did step up and provide a wind policy, although it's expensive, but not through Frontline Insurance Company, an A-rated carrier. And so I was sure hoping to we sent it out to market, just could not get anybody to really step up and quote. I was hoping for one more quote, and they're just not offering renewals. They're just really picking and choosing. And coastal areas, they are really, really picking and choosing what coastal buildings they're willing to put out their exposure.
So the package we have, it talks about a mortgage holder, lost payee to some lease corp of America. That's obviously not us in Troy, Michigan.
Is this on?
Yeah, just after the policy premium.
This is on the club?
It is. It's on the front line, right? That's who we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could that possibly be for the leased equipment and golf carts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good call. So this is just wind. This is the proper.
This is wind only,
Liability
yes.
property is already covered.
Yes, correct.
Wow.
It says on the, instead of the things, it's RAP and cyber liabilities is also included, right?
Right.
My understanding is the wind and hail portion of that
About
is like
43.
43,
That's right.
and the total is 58. That's my point, and if you had there's no deductible on the RAP and cyber, is that a true statement? Or is it a small deductible, a fixed deductible of $5,000?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, and the wind and hail is 5% of the value of the property.
that's correct.
So that's where you get into
100 grand. I guess
100,
that's
you
it.
get into 100 grand really fast per occurrence. And this doesn't cover any of the trees down or any of that kind of stuff. It just covers buildings, so.
The expiring program that we did have at one time did have wind coverage for tees and greens.
Yeah.
But they're not offering that anymore, and I really, really looked hard for that, to try to get that coverage.
Well, we can't afford it.
We do have tees and greens for your package policy, but and for vandalism, I think somebody gets
Yeah.
out with their vehicle and drives around and ruts up the, vandalism and lightning, those kind of things. There's some coverage, but not for wind and hail.
And loss of use due to storm? Is there any of that in here?
No.
Okay.
Again, I would like to recommend the board consider what the cover by getting the insurance without the wind and hail, because I think that's just an exorbitant amount to pay when you take add the deductible into it. I think we can set aside enough money to roll the dice on that. That's just my personal opinion. I think we're paying a hell of a lot for very little possibility that we're going to exceed, between the deductible and the premium, we're going to exceed $100 and some $1,000 a year in damage over the life. That's just my opinion.
Well, you
So I
add the
understand-
$43,000 premium to it, and you got to have a claim of 143 before it breaks even or more.
That's my point.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think there's an
Well,
argument to be
and
made.
I'll agree, Mr. President, it's something we could think about, but I don't see that we're gonna come to any kind of agreement or a benefits analysis or figure anything out in the next couple of months, so.
I think we can
Unless
make a
everybody else
decision.
thinks I'm wrong, I mean, this is the option we have and the only viable option we're gonna have as we're starting the season that we need something.
Can't you write a policy that excludes the wind and hail? Won't they accept that?
We have that.
We already
now.
have property.
We have that.
That's
We
what we
have that
approved
now.
in May.
Yeah, but you don't have RAP and cyber liability in that policy, do you?
No, the RAP, cyber, and that is a separate policy with travelers altogether.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm just.
My point is, if we would approve the quote without the wind and hail, so that would be something on the order of 15K, to not have the wind and hail coverage, would that be a thing we could approve tonight? And drop the wind and hail? If the board decided to do that?
I can't imagine that I'll be in favor of doing that tonight. I'll just offer you that right now. 'Cause, I mean, it's a new concept to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna make that decision in 4 or 5 hours.
There's a storm in
I
the
know it's been
event.
longer than that since we played golf.
Well,
probably wanna
there'll be
bring a
storms all
financial
season long.
analysis.
There were storms all last year, too.
I think before we contemplate something like that, we really do need to do a financial analysis, because if I know $143,000, if we were to have a claim, is a lot, but if we bind this coverage tonight and next week we have an event where a hurricane hits and we have $1 million worth of damage, we're covered. Likewise, if we don't approve this and we've got $1 million worth of damage, we're gonna have to determine whether it's fiscally responsible for us to keep that golf course open or leave it closed.
We just have our straight.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's what our members want.
All right, if you're looking for a motion, I'll
I
make
didn't
a
hear what you
motion to
said,
approve.
Joe. What was your point? I didn't hear it. Comment.
If that happened and we didn't insure for wind, we had the storm and everything was taken out, we would have our spray with no golf. That was my point. I'll make a motion to approve the insurance quotes as written by Mr. Grace of $58,994 and 23 cents, or thereabouts.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries.
I got an eye.
And you were,
Yeah, reluctantly an aye because it,
okay.
one name won't make any difference.
I agree with you that we should have some kind of financial analysis done as to if that makes sense, not just for the club, but for all of our properties.
I think for next year, it's mandatory that we do some of that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think on a percentage basis, it's a bigger factor at the club than it is Holly Navarre based on the premiums and what
Yep.
we're insuring.
Okay, we're up to our a renewal of our cleaning contract. We had 3 proposals that came in for cleaning. One is from someone who's an existing cleaner of the office, and then 2 additional proposals.
Yeah, that's correct. The Andrea Brooks Cleaning, Andrea Brooks is a partner of our existing cleaner is called Alyssa's Cleaning or something to that effect. She's moving on, and Andrea's, I guess, taken over that business and submitted the bids. We also have a bid from Monster Maids as well as Jana King. So the Jana King and Andrea Brooks are real tight at almost around $280 per cleaning. This is twice a week, and it includes the new expansion in the back with the new offices. So that's the main reason for the price increase, is it's more square footage. So on a per cleaning basis, Andrea Brooks, who is currently does it, is the lowest, just by a tiny bit. I think it's $280 even per visit. So we're recommending proceeding with that.
And are we currently happy with the services that we've been getting cleaning wise?
I am. I mean, in an ideal world, we would have, more than 2 days a week, but I think, for what we're spending, I think it's appropriate.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation of the CEO for the cleaning contract.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, it's just, well, Jeff, based on an ideal world, you said it'd be nice to have more than 2. Are you saying we need more than 2 days a week?
No, I think we're spending the right amount. I think when you only do it twice a week, and maybe I'm just coming from a place where they, maybe you have somebody on staff that does it all the time or something. It's not, from a government agency, so maybe that's not realistic, but sometimes the trash piles up, but that's something we can handle internally. So, I mean, don't worry about that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstention? Motion carries. Next up, the property acquisitions on the Eglin reuse project. Mr. Grigler.
Yeah, so Clark Partington is working for Santa Rosa County on the property acquisitions for our Phase 1B of our Eglin project. Back in May of 2022, the board voted to have the funds available for the fair appraisal value of the easement. So I think that probably gave me the authority, but we want to make sure make sure I have the authorization to kind of cut that check when Will says we're ready to make that deposit into those accounts. We want to make sure we're ready to go. We don't have to wait another month or something. So this is just to authorize me to make that escrow payment that we were expecting. And I don't believe the numbers changed. It's that 119,400, correct?
That's right. And board members, this number comes from the appraised values of the temporary and permanent easements, which are along the right-of-way, and which would be the fair market value, which we would submit to the court as part of the litigation, the taking litigation. The timing of the deposit would be prior to or after the court issues an order of taking. And then once the monies are deposited, then title will transfer to the county. But we're at that point to move forward, and we just wanted to have that available and note. Of course, because of the over 1 year since we did the first appraisals, we will be updating those appraisals, and so that number may change a bit, but we'll come back to you if that's the case.
Is any of this reimbursable?
Yes, per your memorandum of agreement, you have a cost sharing, and this will be part of that, adding it and crediting with the other.
Looking for a motion?
I make a motion to authorize the Holly Navarre Water System CEO to make an escrow deposit in the amount of $119,400 Santa Rosa account.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstention? Motion carries. All righty, we're on to new business. CEO update, Mr. Quigley.
Thanks. Yeah, I've got a couple items I wanted to go over. At the last board meeting, we were asked for an update on the forensic audit, so I wanted to provide that tonight. This was approved at our March meeting, and we have since, I believe, completed all the information requests from Carr Riggs Ingram, and they've also sent us a list of eight employees that'll be part of that interview process, and we've scheduled those. So we're started off a little slow, but it's moving now. So.
Do they have a timeline?
I think the interviews are next week.
Interviews are Monday.
Yeah. And I think once they gather their data, they contemplated, I think, 30 to 45 days to a report, I believe.
All the interviews one day?
Over 1 day or over 2 days?
All in one day?
Any other updates for us?
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to mention that we're doing a update of our website. So I wanted to mention this just because I didn't want, if any of you go on the website and say, oh, this has changed, what's going on? Revise is the company that I believe hosts our website, or at least does a web design. And just wanted to brief you real quick. That's the home page. The intention here is to make this website a little more user-friendly. It hasn't been updated, and I believe it's been about 5 years before it's been updated. So we have them do that. If you click to the next slide. So you can see that on the right, it's just a little bit more graphically pleasing. It's essentially the same information and the same things you can click on. It's just been updated. Like I said, it was getting outdated, and I think this will be better for our members. Then go to the third, and the third item is those menus on the left is kind of a click down, and sometimes they're hard to click on because then it'll disappear. This is more of a true drop down we're going to. So it's a minor improvement, but we think this is going to make the website a lot more user friendly. So I just wanted to mention that in case anyone goes on the website and notices a difference.
When does that go live?
I meant to ask Johnny that. I believe in the next couple of weeks. Okay. Next item I wanted to mention, we do have another capital improvement project out for bid. It's our 1 million gallon elevated tank that's going to go at the corner of 87 and 98, adjacent to the Elevate property. We have a pre-bid for that next week, Corey.
Next Tuesday,
And we'll open bids on that in sometime in July.
the week after July 4th.
Week after July 4th. So, and that's just the tank, and then the booster pump station is separate, correct?
Correct.
Yep. So it's wanted to let you know that's another important project that we're pushing out and getting bids on. Last quick thing I wanted to update everybody on was just the storm events of last Thursday night. I think we had over 5 inches of rain here in Navarre. We did lose some power at some lift stations, but didn't have any major issues other than that with the lift stations. Had a water main break, and we also had a force main break over in the Holly area. But given the amount of rain, our crews responded well. I just wanted to recognize Clinton and his crews for responding to those events. It's been a kind of last couple of days has been a lot of severe weather, but it was a ton of rain Thursday night. So sure everyone saw the lightning, so just wanted to kind of update everybody on that. That's all I have for the update.
All right, any questions for Jeff?
How about the contractor that hit the line?
Fairpoint?
Was it a Fairpoint line? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, we're,
We've had them hit several lines.
They've been busy.
Yeah.
Did we get that resolved?
We're still putting a bill together.
Okay.
yeah, I think we have a draft of that. We're gonna try to send that out this week. We put that together and try to get some of that money back.
On that little road beside the building that I had where it sold, the gas company came in, and just on that little road, they cut the telephone line 13 times.
Just so y'all know, we try to recoup every dollar we can from contractors that hit our lines that it's their fault. So we work diligently to try to recoup them funds.
Okay, we're on to finance. Mr. Wrigley.
Yes, I will let Ms. Barbara take the lead on the finances this time.
Okay, just a couple of key factors. We had the first quarter 401k match in excess of $23,000, and the one-time 2022 pension contribution payment. And with that, it caused a little bit of the annual net loss of $27,000 with the monthly net loss of $149,610. But for April, revenue is up a little bit, the expenses are down a little bit, so hopefully we'll get back even.
Any questions on the financials? If not, I'd like a motion to approve the April 2023 financial statements as presented.
And so moved, as you just stated.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstention? Motion carries. All right, director's update. We're going to go over our different committees, finance committee updates. Joe Campbell.
So, I had Daryl talk about the budget, and we talked about one thing there that's pertinent about the pensions that we need to look at, and even though the actuary said we didn't have to contribute last year, we might want to look at that moving forward and make sure that we're ahead of the game. I think the actuary thought people would not take pensions in bulk sums, but everybody is. So, and as Daryl rightly pointed out, if we don't fund it at least above the 80%, we may, depending on the economy, issue that. So that's next for the next pension group. As far as the CIP, the one issue that hit us in the face, or hit me in the face anyway, is Highway 98. So as we're going through the CIP, there is nothing in the CIP. It's a blank line item. And if you don't know it, the Air Force basically nixed the project going behind the route through Eglin property to Hurlburt. Representative Rubin kind of said that was the fastest snow he'd ever heard of anybody. So that to me says that Highway 98 widening will probably commence what they're doing in Gulf Breeze. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but I think that's something the board, because we're looking at pretty big dollars in our engineer's mind, to move our stuff that's in their easement as they widen. Real quick, it came to me as I got stuck in Gulf Breeze the other day. Is it possible to reach out to them to see how much of the easement they're moving in that? I know the plans are only 60% or something like that, but.
They're actually 90, and it shows where they're expanding
Ah,
right-of-way.
okay.
Yeah.
So.
But they're not expanding a lot of right-of-way.
But that is also information from the utilities about.
I gave them the utilities, the easements last time.
So I guess what I'd like to ask the staff is, when should the board start looking at funding for moving those easements? And if you could give us a 2-year, 3-year, I know it's out, but I think the sooner the better, especially after Eglin is done, that we look at funding sources. And you know,
So,
Phil pointed out there may be some that the FDOT will fund for us, fund a loan, but it's still a loan, and those are our responsibility. So I don't know, it hit me in the face that I know it's coming, but I'd just rather be prepared now, or at least have a placeholder so that our members can see, hey, that's 9 figures, or whatever the case may be. So
So I'm the one that scared Joe.
Yeah, you did.
And for everyone's benefit, you know, for the last 5, 6, 7 years, there have been 2 line items on the capital improvement projections, and they've generally been $0. But they're a reminder of the liability that Hauling the Bar has if Highway 98 is expanded. And Highway 98 being expanded is not a if, but a when. And the problem with the expansion of Highway 98 is everything that's been done out there in the last 15 years has never made it to the 5-year plan. In other words, the way DOT normally progresses with the expansion of roadways, everything that's happened on 98 has happened more in response to something instantaneous, an accident, someone being hit because there was no crosswalk, all the shoulder expansions, the turn lane expansions. So you expect that there could be a liability for Hauling the Bar that is substantial as that roadway is expanded. In fact, from the Okaloosa County line to just short of where they envision whatever they're going to do at the intersection of 87 and 98, right now that's envisioned as this great flyover. Whether that happens, no one knows. But the improvements are on the street in terms of being designed for that expansion of that portion of 98. That construction, unless Corey tells me different when we receive the 90% plans, is not in the 5-year plan for DOT. So that really means they've put together a plan. They have presented it to the utilities and the stakeholders. And while they've put together a plan, the stakeholders have gone back to DOT and said, here's what we have to do to accommodate what you want to do, which will probably generate property acquisition that's not currently known. We don't know. I don't think there's been a utility relocation meeting where we have had the opportunity to hear like Florida Power and Light or the telephone companies express their concerns, and generally they have the same type of concerns that we do. But to answer Joe's question, it's really hard to do a cost estimate when we don't really know what they're going to do. And even for the section of 98, which I do believe that we should be preparing a cost estimate now based on what we know, we still don't know what they're going to do in terms of property acquisition. For instance, in some places, you know, our utility water or wastewater could exist under a bike path or a multi-use path.
Head wall.
That wouldn't be the greatest thing in our opinion. I mean, we'd hate to have to dig up a multi-use path to make connections, to repair the line, but at the end of the day, we may not have an option if they don't acquire additional right-of-way. All that being said, Joe, we are working on the cost estimate for that portion. We used to generate kind of a worst case possibility for the Highway 98 location, and we can do that, but it's pretty darn scary when we do that, when in fact we know the impact might not be as bad as that worst case. But, you know, whatever the board directs us to do, we will do in that case.
So the Gulf Breeze, obviously, is it comparable to what they would have to do, for what you would have to do here, the crews, as far as where they've gone and everything? I'm just looking for a template to say.
I think Gulf Breeze is actually much worse than the impact for us, because that's a much more dense right-of-way, and they are, you know, within feet of the edge of the right-of-way because they just can't acquire more right-of-way there. Whereas in our franchise area, they probably can acquire right-of-way without affecting businesses in many cases, at least on one side of the road. But it's not horribly difficult to prepare an order of magnitude cost estimate like we used to have.
Even of a wag of,
We can do that.
It just for the board that it kind of hit me that, hey, Eglin's here, we're going to pay for it, and then the next on the horizon is. And that's a big job because I think it's going to happen. So.
Yeah, well, again, the section of 98 that the plans are out for does not come all the way to 87. So they couldn't build that until they decide what they're going to do on 87. Otherwise, it's kind of stupid. You just have a roadblock, you know, just differently than where the roadblock is now. And of course, the flyover is political in addition to being traffic design related, so.
Okay.
But yeah, for that section, we can do a detailed cost estimate. We will now that we have those plans. For the rest of it, we can do the order of magnitude again. We can refresh that. That's no big deal.
And then Daryl, do you have anything for the budget side of it?
Oh, no, I mean, I think that, we were good on the budget. We're right at 33% for all of our accounts. There's a couple that are a little off. But whenever you're talking about the ones that are off, they're seasonal things. So, like cat fees, that's gonna come in during the year and you may get them all or, beginning or at the end.
That extra pension payment, did
That,
that money come from somewhere? Or?
I'd like to make a comment on that. The extra pension payment we made was for 22. That was for
Right.
last year. So there is money in the budget this year, I think just short of 200K or something like that, that we're anticipating paying this year. So the trustees, myself and Donna are gonna look at that. We're following it month by month, and we're gonna look at that and see. The market's been going up a little bit and helping us some, so I don't know if we're gonna need too much more than that.
And to expound on what Joe said about the pension payment, and what you asked about the one for 2022, all of these pension payments that we're talking about right now are discretionary. In other words, we don't have to make them. There's no rule that says we have to make them. The only reason we have to make them is to keep the pension, or keep it funded above 80%, which means people can take out their
Lump sum
distribution. We don't, it's my opinion that we don't need to do that the way we have been doing. We need to come up with some logical plan, payment per year. Try to keep it at the 80%, but if you go, that payment each year is going to be based on the IRS or federal regs, plus what the stock market does for the year compared. So right now, the $300,000, if it's going to be $300,000 for the next 10 years, then okay, that's what it is. But if it's $300,000 this year and we cover it so people get the 80%, and then 2 years from now, in order to keep it at 80%, we have several people retire, the stock market doesn't do so good. Now we got to make a $5 million payment to keep it at 80%. Is that something we're going to do? So I think it would be in our best interest to come up with a logical plan, that an amount we do every year, regardless of what somebody says it's supposed to be.
And I agree, but I think we need to do this sooner rather than later so we can advertise to the
most
people in
definitely.
the pension plan so that it doesn't come as a surprise to them. That's why.
Oh, most definitely, I agree.
For this last time, previous boards have decided to always offer the lump sum. And Daryl is right, if we're going to keep offering that, we have to keep it at 80%. If we don't offer that, we don't have to keep it at 80%, although we still want to make a substantial contribution in my mind because we don't want to end up with a big bill.
Actually, we've already offered that. They've already accepted we can't get rid of it. But if the pension goes below 80%, it doesn't matter what we've told them. The federal rule that says you can't take it out.
Yep,
That's all I have.
in lump sum.
All right, Eglin Project, that's me. We had our pre-bid meeting on the Phase 1, the construction of the ribs. There were 4 parties at that meeting, and the bid opening on that was this morning, and we only got 1 bid. And so that bid is currently being reviewed, and we are probably going to have a decision to make the special board meeting next week regarding whether or not to go with that bid or to put it out for rebid. So that's the update on that. Will has already updated us on the property acquisition phase of the project.
Any update on the environmental impact study where that is?
That was assigned to Jacobs, and I know they're working on it. I don't know where they are on their timeline on that, but I don't think that was supposed to take.
Well, there's actually nothing to be done right this second except for some setup that they've done. You've approved the plant and then the additional money for it, so they'll affect that in conjunction with the final approval of the plans and the award of the project.
Okay, next up is Club at Hidden Creek Management Board. Mr. Frigler, we got some good financials in our packet this month.
Yeah, I wanted to go over a few items. So we did a budget review last month at the management board meeting. It was essentially the quarter one budget review, which would have been, 25% of the year's revenue and expenses. Revenue was a little bit above that, and the expenses were either right on track or right under 25%. So the budget items were tracking well for that. As far as the financials, still really strong revenues. I think we had some days where the course wasn't available or 9 holes weren't available in May. We still had a really good May in terms of revenue. So the revenue numbers are great. Just trying to continue to focus on the expense side of things. I did want to update the group on our event room. We are looking at some renovations in the event room. We're looking at updating the flooring as well as doing some painting in there. We think that'll certainly help with having weddings and some of the more formal events. We're looking at using some in-house labor for that work, and we think we can get that done at a fairly good price, and hopefully keep that under $25,000 and make that room a lot more marketable for events.
Some of that stuff's overdue.
Yes. What's that?
Some of that work is overdue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then same update, the storm the other night, we had a couple erosion spots out at the course, most notably around the pond adjacent to the driving range. We're working on some remedies for that. So we just went out and looked at that the other day and working up a plan. So we'll be running that through the management board and updating the board as necessary. But overall, they didn't get impacted too bad despite the rain. Obviously, hole number 8 gets real wet. It's going to have to drain. But other than that, they didn't fare too bad either in that bad storm.
Played golf on Saturday. They did have a lightning strike on 15 that hit a tree and then went to ground and hit a water pipe, busted a hole, and it pump shut down. There was a pretty good sinkhole in 2 places. They've since fixed now.
We had a lot of lightning strikes.
Yeah, there was
pipes.
a couple 3,000. We had a fire on one house.
All right, let's see, Fairpoint.
Fairpoint, the one item I wanted to mention is that at our May meeting, we approved the member agreements between Fairpoint and the 3 member utilities. Next step will be for those member utilities to approve it on their end, and then it'll go back to the Fairpoint board for execution. So in July, you'll probably see that come before the Holly Navarre board to approve our updated water supply agreement with Fairpoint. And then Midway and Gulf Breeze will do the same thing. And then it'll go back to the Fairpoint board August, September for final approval.
Okay, and then municipal engineering, Phil Phillips.
We don't have anything to report. We didn't have a board meeting this past month. Our next meeting will be next month in July. We'll probably have something for this board too in July too as well, if Clinton and Mark finish what they're doing.
Okay.
Always leave it. Bus driver.
All righty, we're on the item for our mini excavator purchase. Mr. Prigler.
Yeah, so this is a bid to replace an excavator that's over 10 years old. We got 4 bids. We're recommending the purchase of the Kubota, the amount of $47,000 and change. Yeah, that's the low bidder for that.
That's a budgeted item?
Yes, that is a budgeted item.
Looking for a motion on that?
So move.
Second for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion to purchase the Kubota for $47,322.45. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, are we trading in the old piece of equipment? Or
We are
keeping it or selling it or?
We are not trading it in, Daryl. Typically, we sell that piece of equipment off at a later date.
Okay.
So, yeah. And we most likely will be selling it at a later date.
All right. How long of a later date are we talking? Talking 5 years,
Well,
or as
no.
soon as we get the other one, we're gonna be ready to sell?
Depends on how long it's gonna take us to get the other one.
And so, okay, that's the driver.
Any idea how long that will take?
I do not.
I think once they get the new piece of equipment, they'll tell us if they're done with the old one, and then we have to make a motion.
That's right.
That's the problem.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. All right, we have an item on the agenda to discuss Holland Navarre Water System Bylaws, Article 11, Section 1.
Yeah, so this item, Director Lynchard wanted this item discussed. I think it has to do with some of the language in Article 11, Section 1 relative to our current commercial development policies.
Yes, if you want me to take it, I will. Our bylaws say that the Holly Navarre Water System will purchase, maintain, and install all meters. Our articles of incorporation say that we will purchase, maintain, and install all water meters, and our franchise agreement with Santa Rosa County also states and requires that, and I want to know how that balances with our current policy. And if there is, if our, if we can change the policy and make it to where it violates our articles of incorporation, our bylaws, and our franchise agreement, is there any liability to the members or Holland Navarre?
And to add on that, it doesn't just say the meters, it says they'll install, we will install, maintain, and operate a main distribution pipeline or lines from the source of water supply to the property line of each member of the corporation. That's correct.
So staff looked into this, and the language is clear. It says exactly what it says. The policy that has been, or the operations of the company, at least in recent memory, is that for commercial development, the company has the commercial client take the connection from the service line and install. To change it would be for the company to do this to the property line and install a meter, which is oftentimes not where a developer wants it. The company can't go onto their property. They can only go to the property line. So the concept has been that rather than get into the business of providing the connections from our existing distribution line, which is in most times not at the property line, but some distance from it, then we have the member make that connection. The difference would be that we would simply get into that business, take it to the property line, charge them whatever that would cost. They may or may not want it at that location, then they would, that would just be something we work with. But that is the way we're operating now. Is that in violation? An argument is we're not doing exactly what these bylaws say. What we're doing is, we believe, something that is actually more beneficial to the member, and that is having them make the connection. They're the ones with the permits, they're the ones with the plans, they're the ones who are doing this build out. That's the way we've been operating. If you want to change it, then, let us know, let staff know. And the consequence of that would be that we would then, the company would then be, in a different business, in a different line. We would be more in a service plumbing business. To take this to the property boundary, we could, create a policy, go to the closest, ask them where they want it, whatever you want to do. But we are currently not doing what this says. And the justification is because we weren't getting into, the company wasn't getting into that connection business. And we thought that they would be doing it. They would be able to do it cheap.
The meters themselves are on the property owner's property, is that correct?
I'm going to defer to
For 9 times out of 10, yeah, they're within the easement on their property along DOT right away. So then that way they're not sticking up in DOT right away.
What about the other one time out of 10? Where is it?
That might be a, commercial property off of 399 or something, where there's no DOT right of way. We don't necessarily have to move it out of the right of way. DOT would frown upon it if they saw a bunch of those.
So 9 times out of 10, it would be in the right of way.
9 times out of 10, it would be
On the
in the
prop-
easement on the private property.
In the easement, okay.
Yep.
For a new development, do we pay for the transmission line to their property and install it? Or
No.
do we have them pay for it?
It depends on what line you're talking about. If you're talking about the water line, in most cases, the water line's installed, but in black and white, it says that Holly Navarre will install the main water line and the services. The implication there would be where currently a developer installs that water line in the subdivision, it would have you hire your own people to install that and install the services. Well, then you get into a conflict with Santa Rosa County Code too, which requires a developer to do certain things, particularly like on the sewer side. The Santa Rosa County Code requires the developer to install the sewer. In fact, if it's within a half a mile, it requires them to install it the first quarter mile at their expense and the second quarter mile at the utilities expense, assuming that impact fees can be applied as part of a discount. In most cases, in the franchise area, I can't even remember the last time we had to apply that law. We generally have sewer pretty close to everything that's being built, or everything that a developer would build, Mark, to be quite honest. So it's a mishmash of different requirements depending on whether you're residential or commercial.
So what's industry standard? Like we do it? Or like the bylaws say we should do it?
Oh, no, the way we do it.
Okay.
And to respond to Daryl's question, you see no significant liability for us to continue doing what we've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there has been no issues of this causing any liability problems, you know, and were there to be an issue, you know, we would address it in a, you know, case-by-case basis. Typically, you know, the difference, let's say, for instance, there was a company or a business that we looked at. Typically, the cost benefit of us doing it and then charging them would be higher than what they paid to do it. Now, I don't know that to be the case in every instance, and we haven't costed that out, but, you know, it's a low-level liability threat. I think it's a zero-level threat as to the franchise, because that's what the county code, the way we're doing it is the way the county code is set up. So I can't imagine that there'd be any problems with the franchise, but we could certainly check.
The county code says that we don't have to put in the meters, or we're not supposed to put in the meters?
No, what Phil was talking about with regards to the way the developers are required to install their sewer and their infrastructure in their own development.
Well, I think when this was written, it applied just to the water supply, but the sewer.
Yeah, there was
That's
no
right.
sewer with the
Equation back
bylaws.
then.
and the
No, it was all
articles were
water
passed.
at the time.
So if I own a property and it's currently doesn't have a water line to it, who pays to?
Yeah,
put
you
the
should
water
Extend
line
water
to it?
mains in
Yeah.
the right of way.
It's pretty clear. If you had a development on the water side where we didn't have water in front of that, this utility would extend that water line. Now, this utility might enter into an agreement, most likely with the developer, to have his contractor actually do the construction, but the utility would be liable for that construction.
I would like us to get I think we should get a letter from our attorney on company letterhead saying that they do not think that this poses any risk to Highland Forward. just so we have something for the file in case we ever do get sued.
I think we got the transcript, so we got a legal, I don't necessarily need a letter.
I don't think we need a written letter either. I think we got these transcripts and the legal opinion.
Okay, any action on this, or just up for discussion?
It's just for discussion, to show that we can violate a portion of our bylaws, but not another portion. It's just confusing to me, how we can change, how some things we can ignore in our bylaws and articles, and there's other things we can't.
Well, you know, after the election, there was some discussion from members about reviewing the bylaws, and legal counsel gave us, so I'd make a motion, we form a bylaw review committee to look at the feasibility of updating and reviewing. I mean, we'll talk at the time about having to do mail-outs to see what members wanted to change or not, proxy and all this other stuff, so I'd like to make a motion, we have some sort of committee to look at the feasibility of updating these antiquated bylaws.
Second.
And who would be on this committee?
Who wants to volunteer?
I mean, just board members or?
Board members and staff? I mean, it's kind of like
Staff
our
is
other
like the
committees.
other committees.
Mr. President, I think that this should be a committee that not only includes, I think that we should let staff do a lot of the legwork, but I think that any discussions we have involving our bylaws, our articles of incorporation, that needs to be the entire board, and that needs to be a meeting that is open to the public. Because we are changing the rules for our members.
No, I got it, and I guess my motion was to look at the feasibility of what and where, and then obviously the whole board would have to vote with legal and everything, so I'm thinking, as long as we don't have a quorum, to at least start the discussion with staff, to draw up a paper that says here, I mean, we had Will's recommendation during our training, is that we could look to do it, the courts don't necessarily get into changing bylaws, but if members approve and it's in the best interest of members, I just think we should look at the feasibility. Worst case, it doesn't happen, we don't do it and move on.
Yeah.
But if you don't try, you don't try.
I would like the staff to do the initial legwork on it, come up with what they recommend, and then we pass it out to the board, and see if we're all happy with those, or we have additional corrections. And then the board takes the final action on all.
Well, we also had members.
Yeah, members
some
need to
input
be.
Yeah,
too
we
about-
can do that.
Well, and legal, if it's bylaws, obviously legal needs to be
Part of that development of any recommended changes. I'm sure Will can think of at least a couple of things that would need to be added and deleted, revised. We got a motion and a second. I'm still not clear who's, Joe made the motion and Darrell seconded it, I believe.
As I understand, the motion is to create a bylaws review committee.
Yes. I'm still not clear who's going to be on that committee.
I think everybody's on that committee. I think we're all on that committee.
Well, then it's a board meeting, it's more than four.
Exactly. Because I don't think we need to, this needs to be the board developing this and developing, if staff has ideas, the board needs to carry those ideas through. And we need to be able to all be together in order to do that. Me talking about changes that I like with Jeff and omitting the rest of the board, that does y'all no good. And it does me no good either, because I don't know what your opinions are. You may completely disagree with something that I want. You may agree with it in one way, but not another. So us working together would be much better than having a single, one or two people on this committee and then bringing it back to the board. And, we've had it in the past. I can't remember exactly which one it was. I think it was the employee handbook. We were all going back and forth in the budget last year. We were each meeting individually or on twos, and then we'd come in here and everybody would be confused. So
I don't
think it needs to
disagree
be
with you.
all.
I'm just saying at that point, it's not a committee, it's the board meeting to discuss revising
that.
bylaws.
Yeah, that's it.
So
But the initial step is the staff comes up with the staff, and they can go out to the public if they feel it's appropriate. to see what changes they think are necessary, and then we'll look at it as the board. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
And oftentimes what I'm hearing Director Lynchard say is that would be a board workshop where you would notice it, open it to the public, have a workshop, working discussion with staff available, and with, recommended processes. That's what I'm hearing.
When do we want to do this? How soon?
How often are we gonna wanna meet?
Well, how often do you think you need to prepare them? You have to have a baseline document to start from, so.
Right. we've
What
gotta
kind of
come up
time frame
with
did
What
you-
can we do, what can't we do? It'll take a little while to develop that. Working with
60
Will.
days, 90 days?
We can come up with something in 60 days of what we can and can't do.
Any other board discussion before
I do. I don't know that staff's gonna have anything necessarily add. I think they're in a position probably where they like what they have with that work agreement. But I think that the bylaws state what Daryl just said. I think that makes us liable in some way, so we should talk about it in any form. So I'm in agreement with that.
We're going.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm just
Anyway.
reiterating. I don't know how staff's gonna help come up with something.
Well, you got two issues. You have what the changes actually are versus how do we go about changing them. Those are two different things. Obviously y'all can come up with what changes you want, but can we change them or not is a different animal. I thought that's what Mark was asking staff to. I thought that's what this.
I think it's how we change is the question. There's
That's the difficult
one extremely difficult way, which is the way we're supposed to do it, and then there's one easy way, but we're not sure if we can do that or not. That's gonna require a judge.
And Will gave us that during our, so at least that part is there. So and I agree, if we want to do it as a workshop, I just say let's do it a half hour before the next board meeting, or let's wait to the August board meeting.
Yeah.
That gives 60 days to everybody give their input to Jeff, and staff will have theirs, and
I agree with Mike, having staff determine the rules that staff are subject to, it becomes a problem. The board is kind of the one that needs to make these rules, but staff can certainly give their input.
And anything that we want to do, we have to keep in mind, we're not the ones that are going to decide. It's our members.
Yep.
Speaking of members, Mr. Hall, do you have a comment?
Well, several on that. One thing I believe, you have to put it on your agenda to open the bylaws before you can ever do any modification to it. And another thing I believe is once you've done that, then you take your input and you come up with your final document. To the best of my knowledge, once that final document or final bylaws that you guys think are great, I believe they have to be sent out to all the members.
They do.
And then all the members have to vote on them.
50% plus one.
Not the board.
That's true.
You're correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're following the law here.
You're correct.
I've done this a lot.
This is
in
an
my
uphill
career.
battle. We know this is an uphill battle.
Okay, I'm just saying, I've done this a lot, and if you miss any of the points, then somebody can come back and zap you, somebody's always out there looking to find something wrong with something. So, that was my comment.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstention? Motion carries. All righty, tampering policy, Mr. Krigler.
Yes, Director Campbell asked that we put this on the agenda, and I believe we wanted to have a discussion about the fines in our current policy, is my understanding.
So, yes, the board last tackled this in July. And if you were paying attention, we had 55 members with tampering, and there's a difference between tampering. I hook up to the line just the day before my meter gets there, right? That's kind of okay, that's a little tampering, versus I've hooked up an illegal hookup and I have water that's not metered, or I've turned off the meter and I'm bypassing through the commercial overflow, or I've hooked up to a fire line. So what I'm really looking for is, our policy says, let's take commercial, right? So commercial, $1,000 for a second offense and reported possible criminal prosecution. But the service agreement says you will be a prosecution. So what I'm looking for is, when does staff call the sheriff and say, this is offense number 4 from this business, and at what point do you say, I need to not necessarily make an example, but it is against, it's a Florida statute. It's theft of services. So what I'm really looking for is some input from the board of the staff being able to say, no matter who it is, if it's, you tamper a fire line, that's illegal. And there's a Florida statute, chapter 806, that talks about preventing the establishment extinguishing a fire. So I understand we had a fire marshal out looking at an event, but I want the fire chief. You know, I mean, at what point do you say, look, you tapped into a fire line that could cause death in that facility, whatever. So that's kind of what I'm really looking for, to make sure the staff knows that second offense, you're calling the sheriff.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the thing it doesn't address, though, is it kind of, we have it broken down by property versus, hey, Joe Campbell does it once on property A, Joe Campbell does it once on property B. In the past, that's only a first offense versus, hey, Joe Campbell knows better. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in the tamper policy, and how this board feels about tightening those controls that says, hey, here to go. And moving forward, not retroactive, just so we're aware.
I'm good with it. I do think, I agree with you, whether it's 1, 2, or 10. I think that we do a disservice to staff by not, I mean, obviously it says it here for report for possible criminal prosecution. I think whenever you get to the second offense or the third offense on a residential, it's just staff informing of what they're going to do, because they're supposed to follow the policy that we've written. I think this, in the past, we've had discussions, this person or that person, we know them. I think you got to ignore that. I think you just look at your policy and follow it. So we may want to see what their name is, just to determine if we, if anybody on the board can help or solve the problem. But I think that, staff just tells us and reports it.
So just for clarification for me then, so what are you saying, we should take out the could, just make it will?
Yeah.
In the service agreement?
No, in our policy.
Yeah,
Well, the policy
I think the
says
policy's clear, it's the service agreement, Jeff,
Yeah.
that's the one that's.
$1,000 and
Oh, yeah.
reported for possible criminal prosecution per chapter 812.14 Florida
So we
statute.
say, put in the service agreement, we take out the could and put will.
Yeah, service agreement says could result in possible criminal prosecution.
Shall.
Shall, yeah. I don't have any problem with doing that.
So is that a motion?
I don't know that we can say they will go through a criminal prosecution. All we can say is.
Call them,
we're gonna
contact
report
them.
All we
Shall
can do
be
is report.
reported
Yes.
for.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, and shall be report,
Yeah.
who do you report
That's
to,
the
the sheriff, I
extent
guess,
of
huh?
Yeah,
Those
state's
proper
attorney
laws.
will decide whether to
Yeah.
prosecute,
Okay.
but yeah, the sheriff should be called.
Okay, shall be reported to proper authorities for possible criminal prosecution. I don't know.
I think we leave
Yes,
the
figure
criminal
out how to say
prosecution.
that.
I think the possible criminal prosecution, I think that goes away. I think we report it to the proper authorities.
Okay, shall be reported to proper authorities. Okay,
And then
Mr.
they
Boyer,
take
you
care of
agree
it
with
from
that?
We can only report.
Yeah,
Right.
shall be reported. Okay?
So is that, somebody want to make that motion?
Yeah, I make the motion, we change it to the second offense, and third offense is second offense for commercial is $1,000 and shall be reported to the proper authorities.
And the same thing for the third offense on residential?
Yes,
I'll second that.
proper law enforcement authorities, I guess, is the right word.
Okay. We have a motion and we have a second.
we got, slow down. Got a good point here.
Okay, Joe made a motion, I seconded it, and then we discussed stuff. And then Bill made a motion, and Don seconded.
Oh, I
I
didn't.
didn't realize there was a
What are we
motion
gonna,
made.
what are we gonna do with these two motions that are currently on the
Well,
table?
we have to address the first motion
I didn't
first,
know
but
we
I
had a
didn't
first
realize
motion.
Joe.
Bill's motion addressed my motion.
Yeah, I will rescind my second, if you'll
And I'll
rescind
send
your,
mine first. and Bill-
there we go.
Because he did just what I thought we should.
That's my bad. I didn't
No,
realize
no,
yours was a
no,
motion.
he got there.
All right, so a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this?
We've only got, now we've got one motion, it's the one that Bill made and I
One that
seconded.
Bill made.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes or abstentions? Motion carries. All righty, we're down to engineering, Mr. Phillips.
I think that everything has been covered except for the I&I issue, which was down this past month, but it'll be interesting to see where it is this month with all the rain. There was some stuff found, I believe, that may have contributed to the reduction of it, but it'll be interesting to see what's going on. There's been a lot of localized flooding, so I would suspect that we've taken some I&I in at this point in time.
My same fact, looks like our unaccounted for is creeping up a little bit. See what happens, I'm
It's a
still looking.
moving target, Bill.
Okay.
I had a question about.
You found a couple things there.
We had some meter issues with, Point, so.
Is that what that PLC error at the north valve is? I was looking at that on there and it's 2 million gallons, so it's not a small amount.
Yeah, it was registering 150 gallons a minute higher than what was actually.
That's been swapped out, or
We've adjusted it, yes.
any other questions on engineering? All righty, we're up to member forum.
Mr. President, before we move on, I forgot to ask a question. Can we roll it back to number 2 under unfinished business? I wanted to let everybody get finished and then I forgot to reject it before it was done. But Jeff mentioned the calendar that he's got there in front of him. And I was wondering if, just like our projects for engineering we get in the package every month, if we can have that put in our package every month. So we're all aware of the timeline of our insurance for the entire
I
year.
think that's a great idea.
Absolutely.
So,
You'll see that next month.
I'll make that motion.
I don't even think that's a motion. I think
Let's
We'll just do it.
I've been burned on that before. Let's make that motion.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes or abstention, motion carries. Okay. We're up to member forum. We have Jeannie Zapponi.
Did anybody second that motion? Don?
Mike did.
Mike Matthews.
All right. Jeannie's not here. Ken Walters has left. Houston Walters has left. Harlan Hall, did you need to address the board again?
I've got a couple questions from members in Hauling by the Sea. One guy was curious about if they how do you say that? Floridian?
Florida?
Floridian?
No.
Floridian
If
aquifer.
they put fluoride or however in the water.
No fluoride.
No fluoride.
However you say that word, but it's actually putting fluoride in water and they got a name for it.
Fluoridation.
Couldn't get it off my tongue, but there is no fluoride? Okay, that was just a question from one of the members over there. And then I got another question from another lady that was wondering if on the golf course, if there is any reduced fees or reduced memberships offered to board of director members.
Negative.
Okay,
I hope not.
I paid my $5,300 just this week.
I'm
Certainly none I've been.
asking questions that were asked of me. I told people I was coming to this meeting, that they're having a meet and greet over there.
Harlan, employees get a discount.
On the board of directors.
Employees.
The employees get a discount, military and firefighters and, you know, those.
First responders.
First responders get a discount. Those are the
Okay.
only discounts.
Employees, military, first responders.
Board of directors.
But no board of directors.
So,
That's correct.
so to be clear, at least 3 of us get a discount because we were in the military, but that's why. It's not because we're sitting on this board.
Right.
Just to be clear. I mean, don't want to hide that we
I
are in
kinda,
that.
I put that together when you said it. If you were like retired first responder, retired military, whatever, or active. Let's see, that was a 2 from, but anyway, I was getting these online because I told them I was coming here, so I have no stake in any of those questions, other than just asking them to you.
Happy to answer.
The other thing is, there's been a lot of turmoil the last few months on this board. You know, speculations of overspending and everything else. What's going on with this stuff? Are we getting it settled out, or, I mean, there's some...
I think the speculation, our forensic audit, had to do with the previous CEO and what was authorized and what was not. If that's what you're talking about, of what should have been spent, what not been spent.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. I'm hearing, well, I was hearing that monies were spent way over what was supposed to have been spent without coming to this board.
And that's not happening anymore. Mr. Pigler's bringing every expense that's over his spending limit to the board now.
You understand where I'm at? I don't know all this inside stuff like you guys do.
Yep.
I just know that it's been jacked around a lot at the last 2 or 3 water boards. And if we're getting to the bottom of it and who's responsible and are we going after them?
We're waiting on or I believe we're waiting on the forensic audit. I know that I'm interested to get that back to see what actually happened, and where all the monies went, and if there was anything inappropriate done by anyone, at Holly Bar Water System or the Clover Hill Creek. And once we get that report back, we will decide how to proceed and who needs to be accountable.
Our annual audit has already given us some of that information, that there were expenditures above the CEO spending limit.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was in the annual audit, but I mean.
But there's a board that goes along with that CEO. Because some of those expenditures were over at the golf course, is that my understanding?
Some from the audit?
From the audit?
The audit,
The equipment lease was over the CEO's limit at the golf course.
Right.
But that didn't come before the board.
But
It should have.
But it should have. Now, hold on. You gotta, I don't know, some kind of dog and pony show in my opinion, but don't you have like a LLC over there or something like that?
It is a separate,
and it has a board, right?
Yes.
Well,
We changed that, yeah.
We changed that 2 meetings ago.
Okay, but at the time of the expenses,
Yes.
there was a board there. So anything that would have been spent had to go through that board.
Not necessarily true, because the CEO
So-
took liberties with some of that.
Okay, just hear me out. If that went through that board, but should have came to this board, then more than CEO should be held responsible for that spending. Because if that board authorized it and it never came here, there needs to be more people on the chopping block than just the CEO and held liable. My 2 cents, gentlemen.
Sandy Kemp is not here anymore. So, that's the end of our